For years, Donald Trump repeatedly described Jack Smith as a partisan prosecutor, using labels like witch hunt and accusing him of acting with political motives. He also worked to challenge the cases tied to Smith through legal appeals and public criticism. And after returning to power, took steps that critics say were aimed at dismantling those efforts. But when Smith finally appeared before Congress, the setting shifted completely. Sitting under oath, he made a clear and measured statement. There are limits to what power can erase. He emphasized that legal findings are built on evidence, not opinion, and that his team pursued charges based on facts that met the standard of proof required in court. Then came the line that defined the moment. He said that based on the same evidence, he would make the same decision again, regardless of political affiliation. It wasn't dramatic or emotional, but it carried weight because it was delivered in a forum where statements have legal consequences. For many watching, that was the turning point. It wasn't about campaign rhetoric or media narratives anymore. It was about a direct assertion, under oath, that the case was grounded in evidence strong enough to meet the highest legal standard. And that's the moment that stood out, not because of volume or spectacle, but because it drew a clear line between political argument and courtroom accountability.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss my work as special counsel. I love my country and believe deeply in the core principles upon which it's founded. For nearly 3 decades, I've served as a career prosecutor in both Republican and Democratic administrations. I've handled cases ranging from domestic assault and gang violence to public corruption and election crimes across the United States, and I've prosecuted war crimes overseas. I am not a politician, and I have no partisan loyalties. My career has been dedicated to serving our country by upholding the rule of law. Throughout my public service, my approach has always been the same. Follow the facts and the law without fear or favor. Experienced prosecutors know that specific case outcomes are beyond our control. Our responsibility is to do the right thing, the right way, for the right reasons. These principles have guided me through my career, including as special counsel. I'm proud of the work my team did, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear here today to correct false and misleading narratives about our work. During my tenure as special counsel, we followed Justice Department policies, we observed legal requirements, and took actions based on the facts and the law. I made my decisions without regard to President Trump's political association, activities, beliefs, or candidacy in the 2024 election. President Trump was charged because the evidence established that he willfully broke the law, the very laws he took an oath to uphold. Grand juries in 2 separate districts reached this conclusion based on his actions, as alleged in the indictments they returned. Rather than accept his defeat in the 2020 election, President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results and prevent the lawful transfer of power. After leaving office in January of 21, President Trump illegally kept classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago social club and repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. Highly sensitive national security information was held in a ballroom and a bathroom. As I testify before the committee today, I want to be clear. I stand by my decisions as special counsel, including the decision to bring charges against President Trump. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in criminal activity. If asked whether to prosecute a former president based on the same facts today, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Democrat or a Republican. No one should be above the law in this country, and the law required that he be held to account, so that is what I did. To have done otherwise on the facts of these cases would have been to shirk my duties as a prosecutor and as a public servant. of which I had no intention of doing. I remain grateful for the counsel, judgment, and advice of my team. President Trump has sought to seek revenge against career prosecutors, FBI agents, and support staff simply for having worked on these cases. To vilify and seek retribution against these people is wrong. Those dedicated public servants are the best of us, and it has been a privilege to serve with them. After nearly 30 years of public service, including in international settings, I have seen how the rule of law can erode. My fear is that we have seen the rule of law function in our country for so long that many of us have come to take it for granted. The rule of law is not self-executing. It depends on our collective commitment to apply it. It requires dedicated service on behalf of others, especially when that service is difficult and comes with costs. Our willingness to pay those costs is what tests and defines our commitment to the rule of law and to this wonderful country.
The image alone was hard to ignore. Highly sensitive national security material reportedly stored in places as ordinary as a bathroom and a ballroom, and it set the tone for everything that followed. In front of Congress, Jack Smith spoke under oath about a former president, making a point that cut through all the noise. In the United States, no one is above the law, and every person is responsible for their actions. He didn't raise his voice or lean on dramatic language. He stated it plainly, as a principle that should apply equally, regardless of power or position. At the same time, critics argue that Donald Trump has spent years fighting those efforts through legal challenges, appeals, and a costly defense strategy, aiming to limit how and where such claims are formally addressed. Supporters, on the other hand, see those actions as a legitimate use of legal rights. But in that hearing room, the focus wasn't on spin or messaging. It was on testimony given under oath, where statements carry legal weight and consequences. That contrast is what made the moment stand out. On one side was a legal process built on evidence and accountability. On the other was a prolonged effort to challenge, delay, or reshape that process. And for many watching, the takeaway wasn't just about one case or one individual. It was about whether the same standard truly applies to everyone when it matters most.
Crime in any of that, and I'm just sorry that you had to be lectured about humility and restraint by a politician, because we might not be best poised to lecture you on those particular virtues. But let's go to the toll record, since that's been raised, Mr. Smith. First of all, Congress has allowed toll records to be subpoenaed. This committee has actually tried to limit it over the years, and the senators who are whining the most over on the Republican side in the Senate, they never went along with our determination to try to limit the government's ability to subpoena toll records. So it's perfectly lawful what you did. Explain, why did you want those toll records?
We wanted to conduct a thorough investigation of the matters that was assigned to me, including attempts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power. The conspiracy that we were investigating, it was relevant to get toll records to understand the scope of that conspiracy, who they were seeking to coerce, who they were seeking to influence, who was seeking to help them.
And that's normal investigative practice, right?
In conducting a criminal investigation, securing non-content toll records, as you described, is a common practice in almost any complex conspiracy.
Okay, let's go to something else that I've been hearing over the last week by our colleagues as they've eagerly anticipated your arrival here. They've been saying that there's some kind of First Amendment defense that Donald Trump would have had to the crimes you indicted him for. Is there a valid First Amendment defense to defrauding the public? Is there a valid First Amendment defense to disrupting a federal proceeding? Is there a valid First Amendment defense to violating the voting rights of the people and cheating the public out of a fair election?
The First Amendment is something we took seriously in our investigation. But the First Amendment does not protect speech that facilitates a crime. Speech that is used to facilitate a crime, a fraud crime in particular, is not protected under the First Amendment. The Supreme Court precedent on that is clear. This is an issue that we litigated before the district court, and the district court ruled, as I just stated, that it is not in fact protected.
And the case law is perfectly clear on this, right? All frauds are perpetrated by speech, right?
Yes.
All conspiracies are perpetrated by speech. So just because your criminal conduct is brigaded with speech doesn't somehow mean you've got a First Amendment defense against trying to overthrow the government. I mean, the people who attacked the police officers on January 6th were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." I suppose that was political speech, or they were saying, "Stop the steal." Does that mean they've got a First Amendment defense to violent assault against the officers?
It does not.
William Barr, by the way, was somebody who was perfectly clear about that. Donald Trump's own attorney general said, there's no freedom of speech that you have to engage in a conspiracy to overthrow an election, to commit crime. He was perfectly clear about that. Back in those days, in fact, lots of people on that side of the aisle, including my good friend, the chairman, denounced the violence that took place on January 6th. The cat's got their tongue these days. My friend Chairman Jordan said, what happened last week was terrible, it was tragic. It's as wrong can be, he said. Republicans, we know all political violence is wrong. I asked my friend Chairman Jordan at a rules hearing, are you also not interested in what happened to us on January 6th? He said, of course, everyone's interested in holding people accountable who did wrong. The FBI is doing that. The Justice Department is doing that, appropriately so. What do you think about the attack on the Department of Justice and the special counsel for doing your jobs?
I think the attack is unjustified. I think the people who worked with me as career public servants are people, they're part of the reason I've been a prosecutor for so long is to work with people like that, not just the prosecutors in my office, but also the agents, FBI agents who are heroes, who have served their country not only as agents, but also overseas. I think those attacks are unwarranted based on the facts, and I think that they have no basis in who we are as Americans, as a country. I don't see attacking people like that as anything.
This is what makes that testimony matter so much in the middle of everything unfolding right now. In a calm but unmistakable tone, Smith told Congress that he has watched the rule of law weaken over time, that it does not protect itself, and that people have grown too comfortable assuming it will always hold without effort. He stressed that preserving it requires active participation, not passive belief. Then he pointed out the setting itself, speaking in a hearing room led by members of the same political side now facing accusations of removing FBI agents tied to his cases, issuing pardons to individuals he prosecuted, and shaping the Department of Justice in ways critics argue protect allies while targeting opponents. Whether one agrees with every claim or not, the message was clear. Institutions only work when they are defended consistently, not selectively. And through all of it, Smith showed no hesitation. He didn't soften his stance or retreat under pressure. He simply said he would make the same choices again. That steady response became the defining moment, because it shifted the focus away from politics and onto principle. Meanwhile, Truth Social remained the space where Donald Trump reacted in real time, highlighting the contrast between two very different arenas. One shaped by sworn testimony and accountability, the other by public messaging. For many watching, that contrast captured the deeper issue at play. What happens when truth is tested in a place where influence, pressure, or power can't easily change the outcome?